news here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. The private sector continues to push for the use of COVID vaccine cards to increase mobility and help reopen the economy. This as the government struggles to have more Filipinos vaccinated. To tell us more about this, we have Shaila Francisco over the line. She's actually in Makati right now to tell us more about this. Shaila, good afternoon. What do you have for us?
Charles, the government admits they still have difficulties in inoculating senior citizens against COVID-19. As of end May, only about 14% of the country's 9.4 million senior citizens have been vaccinated. In a forum hosted by Go Negosyo, Dr. Nina Castillo-Carandang of the National Immunization Technical Group says, aside from lack of information, a lot of senior citizens have problems with registration and transportation to vaccination sites. For one, registration for COVID-19 vaccination is done online, making it hard for some seniors who are not used to technology to access the site. Karandang adds that vaccination sites should be easily accessible and efficient. For its part, the government says they are mobilizing vaccine passes and conducting home vaccinations for senior citizens and those with comorbidities. They are also shifting their focus on inoculations for families instead of individual vaccination to influence the perception on public programs. Meanwhile, the private sector is pushing for the use of vaccination cards to allow more mobility, not just for senior citizens, but for others who have been inoculated. According to the Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship and Go Negosyo founder Joey Concepcion, this will encourage the country to open the economy more safely and persuade the public to get vaccinated. They are also asking the government to allow fully vaccinated seniors to go out of their homes. The private sector also urges the government to do away with RT-PCR testing in domestic travel of fully vaccinated individuals. Charles, the government will no longer get 50% of vaccines procured by the private sector, which was previously supposed to be donated to the government. This as the government is now confident that it has enough vaccines to achieve population protection or vaccination of 50 to 70 million this year. Charles?
Thank you for those updates, Shaila. That was Shaila Francisco reporting live from Makati. Baguio City is considering opening its doors to more tourists as soon as 70% of its population has been vaccinated. Dale De Vera with the details.
Tourist activities in Baguio City are slowly blooming back to life. The city government is now allowing people of all ages, including children and the elderly, to go outside, at least in open areas. Over the weekend, the city even held its inaugural floral sculpture competition titled Sabsabong Timayo 2021. Some entries are COVID-19 themed, like this gown which featured a face mask made with flowers. During the awarding ceremony on Sunday, Tourism Secretary Bernadette Romulo Puyat announced that the DOT will urge the IATF to allow the entry of NCR Plus tourists in top local tourist destinations, including Baguio City.
Hopefully by June 1, Mayor, napayagan na ng ating mga doktor na may travel na from NCR Plus will actually finalize tomorrow afternoon na kung June 1 pwede na from NCR to go to Baguio or to any tourist destination.
The move is supported by Baguio's Mayor Benjamin Magalo, provided that minimum health standards are met and followed. According to the city's recent COVID-19 data, Baguio has 584 active coronavirus cases, while 21 barangays are under lockdown. 170% of Baguio City residents have been fully vaccinated. The LGU will start to ease restrictions to tourists who also receive their second round of COVID-19 shots. For the meantime, the LGU still relies on its stringent entry process, which includes implementing their own QR code system.
And we're working closely with the VIMS team na sana mapabilisan nila yung crypto code para once na may lagay na nila dun sa VIMS yan, every time na may darating na vaccinated individual, all we have to do is scan the code at makikita na natin na talagang legitimate.
For News 5, Dale De Vera, We're One News.
Vaccinated Ilocanos will not only obtain immunity from severe COVID-19, they'll also have the chance to win a house and lot. This was announced by Santa LGU in Ilocos Sur as a way to persuade residents to get inoculated. According to Santa Mayor Jesus Bueno Jr., the two-bedroom house will be built on a property in Barangay Labut Norte, a property that he inherited from his family. He also said that he would use his personal money to pay for the construction of the house. The raffle draw will be held on December 16 and will be open only to vaccinees who belong to the poorest of the poor. Infectious disease expert Ron Jean Solante says quarantine restrictions may be relaxed within the NCR Plus bubble. Speaking with Cito Beltrano on Agenda, Solante explained that looser restrictions may be implemented for as long as the bubble stays in place. That's because a surge in nearby provinces, as well as an increase in COVID-19 infections in Visayas and Mindanao, may have an impact on the NCR Plus.
Kita natin ngayon, with this NCR bubble, mukhang talagang may effect yung mga ginagawa ng gobyerno in terms of border control, in terms of vaccination, and in terms of yung implementation ng mga health protocol. No? If you look at the 5,000, 6,000 cases a day, more than 50% of that still coming from the NCR bubble.
The Octa Research Group remains hesitant to recommend the easing of the quarantine status in the NCR Plus bubble. On Radyo 5's Ted Filon, Professor Guido David explains that the downtrend in cases in the bubble is no longer stable and is starting to slow down. And David says relaxing quarantine restrictions must be done gradually.
Let's do it slowly kung magluluwag tayo. Kasi yun nga, medyo bumabagal na yung pagbaba eh. Medyo nakaka-concern yan. Sa ngayon, medyo kulang yung information natin para masabing magluwag na tayo or hindi. Kasi dahil nga naging unstable yung trend.
The Octa Research Group adds that it's best to retain current quarantine protocols for at least a week or until cases start dropping again. And once the caseload is stable, David says health authorities may start gradually increasing the allowed capacity in establishments.
Pwedeng status quo for 1 week or kung gusto nila magluwag na GCQ na magdadagdag lang ng konting capacity sa establishments, baka posible naman yun. Kaya 10%, 20%, magiging 30%, ganun. Very gradual. Ako mismo baka mas pabor ako ngayon sa status quo dahil nga naging uncertain yung trend.
With more than a year since the start of the coronavirus pandemic, is finding out the source of the virus still relevant to this day? Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health professor and virologist Andrew Pecos talks about this on Bloomberg Surveillance. Let's take a listen.
The important thing to understand here first is we want to differentiate where the pandemic started from versus the process that got this virus into humans. So I think it's clear that this is not a virus that has been engineered in any way by humans. It seems to be a natural isolate, and we think that the way it became a human pathogen is because it went from bats into animals and then from animals into humans. And I think what the debate right now is about is that last step. Did that last step happen because of a person coming into contact with one of these intermediate animals and that launched pandemic? Or is it a situation where a laboratory was working with this under unsafe conditions, there was some sort of a lab leak, and that caused the pandemic? You know, working on these viruses for over 20 years, I can tell you that the safety precautions that have to be put in place are really quite high. And so the likelihood of a lab release is really very, very, very low.
It makes sense that coronavirus that started at a market in Wuhan might have come from the coronavirus lab down the street in Wuhan. And it's also understandable why you wouldn't want to immediately discuss that. I mean, politically, it's difficult for China, and there's no reason to rock the boat. How important is it to scientists to find out where this virus came from?
Oh, it is absolutely critically important. And that's why I think you're hearing some scientists saying when we approach this issue, we want everything on the table because we don't want to rule something out for political reasons or because we don't want that to be the reason the virus emerged. I'm simply saying that the critical thing here is going to be understanding how that virus went from bats into some other animal and into humans. And that's going to tell us something about the pathway in which viruses can enter the human populations, and that's going to help us prepare better for the next pandemic if we can find ways to limit that exposure. Again, if it happened through a laboratory, then that's something we also have to understand. But even if that was the case, it was probably adapting before that to infect humans, and so we need to go even deeper than that to understand how the ecology of this virus resulted in something that can cause such a tremendous pandemic.
Is the risk of getting ill or possibly fostering some sort of additional variations pretty much off the table if you have been vaccinated at this point?
I would say that if you're vaccinated, you certainly are protected to a great degree. We've had some tremendous data coming out, especially over the last 4 to 5 months, that shows how good the vaccine is working at preventing severe disease, at preventing symptomatic disease, and even at preventing transmission.
And those are the top stories at this hour. Join us again later at 2 p.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on Signal Play. Just register for a free account at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime and anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.